Okay, welcome back for part four. Yes, that's true, part four. And I knew it was going to be a long one, but again, take your time and digest it. I'm not going to be unfair to you and push you on when you're not understanding this or having some success with the exercises. So, um, this last video should, well, it's not going to be that short because even though what I have in front of you, I noticed that there was another slide there that I'm going to get to, so I'll get to that in a moment. But um, this is kind of what we're going to be doing next, which will be a couple days because it'll take you a couple days to try some exercises. But something called UML, and it's a way to visualize how our classes interact with each other. So, for instance, in our example, we had a vehicle class and had these keys or attributes, as the would be called in Code Academy: type, move, verb, and passengers. And then it had that method moving. And then when we use that prototype uh, line, that one right, I might have commented out this one right here, that car dot prototype equals new vehicle. What that did is that made it so car also had all of these things in it. Okay, and this way of visualizing it is a called UML, Unified Modeling Language, and we'll actually talk about this in a couple of days. But these are called class diagrams, where vehicle is a class and car is a class, and that line right there shows that car has inherited a whole bunch of stuff from vehicle. Um, in the couple of days from now when we talk about UML, you'll actually be responsible for making some of these diagrams, and I'll show you a couple of ways to do that or why we would want to do that. Um, but for the end of this video, what we're going to do is talk about public and private properties. Public variables can be accessed outside of the class. The keyword this in the class or object constructor shows it is a public variable or property. Um, so in our class definition, so this was our class definition, this was a class definition. In our function class definition, notice we had the word this. The word this shows that all of these things can be accessed outside of the class itself. Well, that makes sense because down here when we, change some of the things, move and verb, we were allowed to do that. That means they're public variables or public properties or public attributes. Okay. Um, in contrast to that, back to the note, we could have private variables. Um, this should say cannot be accessed outside the class. The keyword var used in the class or object constructor shows it as a private variable or method. And so I'm going to show you an example of that. So if we used var, we're used to the keyword var, but if we use var inside, so let's say we used var inside our vehicle class. Okay, so I'm going to save this. Right now, what do I got going? I got not much going. I'm going to make my fraud car, and then which one did I change? I changed move. And so what I'm saying is this isn't allowed anymore. So let's see if indeed I get a error message. Remember that pops up because we're making a new car method, and oh, we're not printing anything out, so that's why that's going on. All right, so now let's go back here and actually print something out. And I'm gonna change this to something crazy so we'll notice if it's actually worked or not. Um, rest all. It actually did. So that would be because it's inside, we're changing it inside this program itself. Of course, in bigger projects, bigger companies use these programs that access each other. Well, once you get doing that, it's your data becomes to the point where you don't want any old Joe changing it. Maybe we don't want to give the user a possibility of changing certain values, like for instance bank account information, right? Maybe it's only certain people get to change that. Well, we do that using the var keyword. So let's see if I can actually get this to trip one of the an error message here. Let me just investigate for a moment, and I'll report back. Oh, I've got it sorted out, pretty sure. Like I said, the word this means it's a public variable. The word var means it's a private variable. I'm still setting these things when I call my constructor right here to make a new plane. I'm working on a plane instead of the car here. It still sets all those things, but now when I notice on this line, I'm printing off the entire object plane, which always gives me the what it is and all of its key and value pairs. And then here, I'm specifically printing off the move key, which, remember, move is my private one, and I want to show you that. So I run that, and notice when I printed off the plain vehicle, it had the verb, it had passengers, it had the type, and then when I printed that off, the move, it said undefined. Notice that move doesn't appear here, it's private. And so this is a way to hide certain values or certain things from the user. Okay, and that's important not only for data protecting as far as things like bank account and stuff like that, but if you don't want your user to change things like the size of a button or whether they can drag stuff or click on stuff, this is important in dealing with web pages. So this is how we hide certain information from the user. You say, well, okay, great. Probably in real programming, most of this stuff is private, isn't it? Yes, it is. So how do you get access to it? And that was the next thing in the note. It says, how do you access private data? Well, you can access private data if you have a public function. So let me show you what I mean there. So in our public function, we had, in our vehicle constructor, and I'm going to have this in a example in a second here. I'm going to copy that before I goof around with much. I'll copy it after I make this what I call an accessor method. So this I'm going to put in this dot get move equals a function, and in this function I'm going to actually have just return move. So go back. We don't need the word this in there, because what happens is when I have this little tiny function, this get move function, in my vehicle constructor, it knows to connect this and this. These two things are the same business. And notice that Notepad++ is pretty nice because it showed me where the other spots where the word this is. And so this is what's called a public accessor function. So even though this is hidden and I can't print off move directly, I can use this tiny little function to read that for me. So have a look. Instead of printing off just plain.move, I have plain.getMove, and plain.getMove actually will return that private data. Okay, let me show you how that works. Bam. Notice that move is still not up here. Move is still not up here, but I am able to access move using the getMove method. Okay, so that is called an accessor method. Well, what happens if I actually wanted to change the value? You know, normally if it was a public variable, we just say plain.move equals something like that. But it's private. It's private. So what we would have to do is we'd have to create another method that's going to set the move. And notice we haven't written this yet. So I'm going to have to go back up here and actually write another tiny little method called setMove that's going to call one. It's going to have one parameter, and it's going to set the value of move to whatever was the parameter. Okay, so that should work, and let's see if it does. So I've got there, I'm printing off the entire object. There I'm just printing off its method of movement. Then I'm setting it to a new value, and then I'm going to print it off again. So let's see if that actually worked. I am a plane that uses its wings to fly. Notice it was engine, then we switched it. If we actually tried to just change it directly, plane.move equals wings, we wouldn't be able to do that because it's a private variable. Okay. So, well, Restall, holy moly, why would we worry about this sort of thing? Well, it was much easier when this was all just thises. Just by changing that one word from this to var, it made it that you had to add all this extra code. And this is true, but in big situations where controlling data and controlling behavior of the program is so important, this is what's going on. And they mention it in Code Academy, and so then I mention it to you. We will get a chance to play with this, but it's not going to be that big of a deal for us for our programs. Our programs are going to stay pretty small. Okay, huge long marathon lesson today. Finally done. Have some fun over the next couple of days trying to sort out some homework exercises.